Welcome to episode 43 in this chess puzzle adventure series starring Bobby Fischerman, Average Joe, and Peter Potzer. Previously, as Bobby Fischerman had walked out of the house, someone or something had grabbed the golden key from around his neck and scurried over the top of the house. And that's where we pick up our story today. Now, for those of you who are paying attention, you may have recognized the hat as the same hat that the caterpillar was wearing from episode 23. And indeed, it was the caterpillar. Now, after he scurried over the other side of the house, Bobby, Joe, and Peter immediately ran around and started chasing the caterpillar. Now, this caterpillar could crawl really quickly, and he just kept crawling, and they just kept chasing, and he kept crawling, and they kept chasing, and they ran after this caterpillar for the next 3.5 miles. And finally, after chasing him for 3.5 miles, the caterpillar needed to stop and catch his breath, and he just stopped crawling. Bobby Fischerman caught up and grabbed the caterpillar. Average Joe was not far behind. He came up panting, trying to catch his breath, and they turned around and they realized that Peter Potzer was nowhere to be seen. But Bobby Fischerman at this particular moment was more interested in the caterpillar, and so he forgot about Peter for just a second. He said, "What is wrong with you? Why have you been cheating in tournaments? Why did you steal my golden key? What's going on?" The caterpillar said, "I didn't mean anything by it. I just wanted to make sure that the dragon's tear didn't end up in the hands of the chef. Because if that happens, it will not be good." Bobby and Joe looked at each other. They looked at the caterpillar, and they said, "We don't believe you." The caterpillar said, "Okay, that's fair. I could see why you would say that, but I can prove it to you if we go to the ancient libraries. There's something there that will prove that I'm telling the truth, and you'll know that we need to keep the dragon's tear away from the chef." Bobby and Joe didn't totally trust the caterpillar, but they were curious to see what he had in mind and what was going to prove that he was telling the truth, and so they agreed to go to the ancient libraries. But Bobby Fischerman said, "But first, I want my golden key back." The caterpillar said, "That's fair, but since this is Puzzle Island after all, you need to solve this puzzle first." And with that, he presented the following position to Bobby Fischerman. All right, so here's the situation. It's white to play and win, and black's pawns are going down the board in this direction. So keep that in mind. White to play and win. Before I say anything else, what do you think the winning move is in this position? Well, if you had a chance to look at that, the winning move is the move king to c5. You need to bring the king forward to start hunting down the pawns, and this is the only way to win. Now, if you thought that you should take the pawn first with check, let me show you why that's not the correct solution. Because if you go here, black's going to play king to c3, which is a fork. Notice the rook and the bishop are being attacked. How do you save both? The answer is you can't. So you could save the rook. He's going to grab the bishop. And yes, you have the rook, but you have to stop this pawn as well as this pawn, and your king is not in a good position to help you. So for example, if you just grab this with check, he's just going to move his king up, and he's basically just threatening to go like this and then get a queen. And unfortunately, your king is too far away. You just are not in time to catch it. You could go there, but what are you going to do? Next move, black gets a queen. You have to sack the rook, and that's it. Or you could do like check back and forth, but that doesn't help you win. It's just going to be a draw, okay? So that's what happens, going back all the way to the beginning, if you just take the pawn with check, okay? So you need to bring the king forward and start hunting this pawn on d4. Now, black is going to play the move. Well, there's two options here, but the main one is king to c1. Now, really quickly, if they decided to go with d3, let me show you what would happen. We're not going to focus too much here, but rook takes b2 check. You could slide over, and you still have the bishop, which is a big deal. And so if he tries to push, you could actually just use the bishop to stop this, and you can see how white is going to be okay. After here, you just take that, you come back with the bishop, and you're totally fine. You've stopped all the pawns, you still have your rook and bishop, everything is good, okay? So the more challenging move for black here is king to c1. And what he's doing is getting out of the pin, right? Remember, he couldn't get the queen straight away because it's pinned. But now he's threatening to do that, right? Black's about to get a queen. But what does white play? You had a chance to look at that. The move is bishop to d3. You have to use the bishop to stop the queen and be able to sacrifice for it, right? What else can you do, right? You can't use the rook. It's not in a position to do that. The king is too far. Only move bishop to d3. So it's the queen. Take the queen. He takes you. And now you still have the same problem as before that you have to, how do you stop both of these two pawns? So think carefully here because there's only one correct move. White to play and win. What is the winning move? All right, well, if you had a chance to look at that, the winning move in this position is rook to h2. And this is fascinating to me because when I was looking at this position, I said, no way that this is the only winning move. If you come over here, then surely this could be a winning move or this could be a winning move too, right? Because they all kind of accomplish the same thing, right? If you would like to pause and try to answer that question, why is rook h2 different from rook g2? Just think about that for just a few seconds. All right, well, if you had a chance to think about that, just keep that in the back of your mind. We're going to come back to that at the end of this puzzle, okay? So rook h2 is the only winning move. Now, you might be wondering, well, what if I were to have just taken the pawn? Isn't that going to be good enough? And the answer is no, because after d3, you have the same problem. The king's going to come here, and then this is going to become a queen, and how do you stop it? If you try to use your rook, the king just goes there. We've kind of seen this position before. And if you try to use your king to hunt it down, you're too slow. What are you going to do, right? So that doesn't work. There's a couple of other moves, like, for example, if you tried rook to a3, thinking you could stop the pawn this way, black just moves and attacks you, and then they can actually just change plans using this pawn now, and you have the same issue as before. You can't really catch it. You're going to have to just sack the rook, okay? The rook a3 doesn't work, and rook to g2 also does not work, and we're going to come back to that, like I said, at the end. So, only winning move, rook to h2. Okay, so what is black going to do? Pushes the pawn, a3. And they're choosing this one because I guess it doesn't really matter. This is more tricky because the king is a little bit further away from this compared to this one, I guess is the idea. But this is just the main line. We're going to just go with it. Okay, so the same idea, basically. They're trying to get the queen. How do you stop them? White to play and win. What's the move? You got a chance to look at that. The move is king takes d4. And you might be thinking, if you take the pawn, black's going to play a2, and you can't stop the queen. Like, what are we going to do? I mean, yeah, you can go check, but then they just come up and they still have the threat, and you can go check again, but that's just going to lead to a draw if you just go back and forth. So how do you win? White to play and win. If you had a chance to look at that, the move is king to c3. What? King to c3? You're going to allow black to get a queen with check? And you're going to win the game with only a rook? No. Yes. Check. What's the winning move? It's king to b3. Look at this. It's king to b3. You're trapping the king, okay? So this is a checkmate threat, right? That's fine. And all of the checks with the queen here, are basically just sacrificing the queen. You would just take it with your rook, or you would just take it with your king. So they can't put you in check. You have a checkmate threat. If they try to run away from the checkmate threat, they just get skewered, and they lose their queen and also lose the game. And the move that black normally would be able to play is queen here to stop the rook. And what do you guys notice about that? That's right. This pawn is in the way. It's in the way. It's blocking the queen. So remember earlier, if the rook was on g2, this would not work because you're threatening this, but the queen could just go here and stop you. And that is why rook to h2 was the only winning move. How incredible is that? Just let that sink in for a moment. And this is just fascinating. This random pawn here, which you're like, why is that pawn on c6? What does that even matter? No, it totally matters. Because if this pawn wasn't here, black would be able to win. Because you would go here, you'd stop the checkmate, and you're going to win. It's fascinating. Right now, we're not done yet, because what black could have done instead is promote to a knight. And what does that do? Well, it stops the king from coming over and trying to checkmate you. But the problem is, a rook against a knight is going to be a win if you're able to mop up this pawn, and you actually can do that. And then also, the fact that the knight is stuck in the corner is also not good. So you could just move your rook, actually, and what is black going to do? If you go here, you lose the knight. If you go here, you'll also lose the knight. So the only thing you could do is move your king or your pawn. And eventually, after the pawn kind of pushes, you would just take it. This is going to be a win for white. Something like this would be how you would do it. Wow. Fascinating position, right? Absolutely incredible, going back to the main line here, where even though you let them get a queen with check, and all you have is a rook, you're still able to win because this little guy right here. So, I mean, that's so cool. That's just so cool. All right, so back to the story. Bobby Fischerman successfully solved the puzzle, and the caterpillar gave him the golden key. And then Bobby and Joe looked around, but Peter was nowhere to be seen. They wondered what had happened to him, and that's where we'll pick up our story next time. Thank you guys for watching, and happy adventures at the chessboard.